Breaking news. The 2025 battlefield is witnessing unprecedented developments that could reshape the course of the Russia-Ukraine war. According to intelligence reports, President Putin has issued orders for select Russian troops to pull back in certain sectors.
All servicemen of the Ukrainian army who comply with this requirement can freely leave the area of military actions and return to their families.
This tactical withdrawal is not a full-scale collapse, but it signals that Russia's offensive strategy is under serious strain. Analysts warn that this could mark a pivotal turning point in the conflict. The Russian frontline units are facing massive pressure, fueled by Ukraine's precision artillery, drone swarms, and modern counter strategies. If you're following this breaking update, subscribe, like, and share, and tell us in the comments, is this a strategic setback for Russia or just a tactical repositioning? The intensity on the front lines has forced a re-evaluation of Russian strategies, and experts believe that the coming weeks could dramatically shift the momentum of the war. Next, we'll explore how the Russian front line is weakening, the Ukrainian counter-pressure, and the impact of massive casualties on the overall war strategy. By the first quarter of 2025, Russia had launched an aggressive offensive along the eastern and northeastern axes, aiming to capture strategic towns and disrupt Ukraine's supply lines. For months, the Russian command believed that overwhelming numbers and firepower would allow them to maintain momentum, but the situation on the ground soon revealed serious vulnerabilities. Forward battalions quickly became overstretched, often operating far from supply depots and reinforcement points. Reports from multiple field sources indicate that troop rotation was irregular, leaving soldiers fatigued and under constant pressure. Meanwhile, Russian artillery units struggled to maintain effective fire coverage as Ukrainian counter-battery fire and precision strikes increased in frequency. Key challenges faced by Russian forces: logistical strain. Supply convoys were often delayed or intercepted, leaving frontline units undersupplied. Extended front lines. Russian units were spread thin over multiple combat sectors, reducing their ability to respond to Ukrainian advances. High casualty rates. Persistent artillery bombardments, ambushes, and small unit assaults led to continuous personnel losses. Troop fatigue. Many units were operating at maximum capacity without sufficient rest or rotation, affecting combat effectiveness. Military analysts from the Institute for the Study of War, ISW, reported Russia continues to advance in some locations, but the cost per kilometer is unsustainable. The attrition faced by these units is unprecedented for this stage of the conflict. The combination of stretched supply lines, continuous Ukrainian attacks, and manpower exhaustion forced Russian commanders to reassess their strategy. Instead of pressing forward aggressively, some sectors were ordered to fall back slightly to consolidate defensive lines and prevent total collapse. This forced tactical withdrawal was carefully executed, but it revealed a key vulnerability. Even with superior firepower, Russia's offensive momentum could not be maintained without sustainable logistics and troop rotation. Analysts note that this may signal a turning point where Ukraine can exploit weaknesses while Russia tries to regroup. In addition, satellite imagery and field reconnaissance have shown that several forward positions previously held by Russian forces are now less fortified, indicating a strategic pullback rather than an outright loss. This is significant because it shows that while Russia is not collapsing, the strain on its forces is forcing careful management of the front line, slowing down any potential major advances. From January to mid-2025, Ukraine executed a calculated and relentless counter-pressure strategy against Russian advances. Unlike previous phases of the war, Ukrainian forces combined modern warfare tactics, intelligence-driven operations, and precision artillery to systematically challenge Russian positions along multiple frontline sectors. One of the most significant elements of Ukraine's counteroffensive has been the integration of NATO intelligence support. Field reports indicate that Ukrainian commanders were able to predict Russian movements, anticipate artillery barrages, and strategically plan ambushes and counterstrikes. This level of intelligence coordination significantly increased the operational risk for Russian units, forcing them to adjust their positions under pressure. Key tactics employed by Ukraine: Small unit maneuvers, highly trained squad-level operations targeted vulnerable supply points in isolated units, causing disruption and delay. Drone and UAV deployment. Continuous drone surveillance allowed real-time monitoring of Russian troop movements, enabling precision strikes on key artillery positions and logistics convoys. Night assaults and hit-and-run attacks. Ukrainian forces frequently executed covert night operations, catching Russian soldiers off guard and forcing tactical withdrawals in several sectors. Artillery counter-battery operations. By targeting Russian artillery with precision strikes, Ukraine reduced its ability to maintain continuous bombardment, giving their own forces room to maneuver. The cumulative effect of these tactics was a significant erosion of Russian frontline strength. Russian units, previously confident in their numerical advantage, found themselves facing continuous attrition and operational unpredictability. Multiple intelligence sources indicate that Russia was forced to abandon or reposition several forward positions, not due to outright defeat, but because holding them under constant Ukrainian pressure became unsustainable. Analysts emphasize that this counter-pressure represents a shift in Ukraine's operational doctrine. Previously, Ukrainian forces relied heavily on defensive postures, but in 2025 they have demonstrated the ability to control tempo and initiate targeted offensive operations, even under the threat of superior Russian firepower. Satellite imagery and reconnaissance reports have shown clear signs of this Ukrainian advantage. Certain Russian forward positions are now less fortified, with trenches and defensive works abandoned or relocated. Mechanized units have been repositioned behind secondary defensive lines, indicating a planned tactical fallback rather than chaotic retreat. Supply depots and logistics hubs have been repeatedly targeted, forcing longer supply routes and slower response times. Moreover, Ukraine's use of high-tech surveillance systems, including drones, electronic warfare, and satellite tracking, has created a persistent information advantage. Russian commanders report difficulty in gathering accurate battlefield intelligence, further compounding stress on frontline units. Field officers from Ukraine describe the psychological impact on Russian troops. Constant monitoring, unpredictable strikes, and inability to rest properly have reduced morale even among veteran units. In combination with high casualty rates and stretched supply lines, this pressure is reshaping the frontline dynamics. Analysts conclude that the Ukrainian counterpressure is not only tactical, but also strategically significant. It slows Russian momentum, preventing large-scale territorial gains. It forces Russian forces to reconsider offensive plans and redistribute forces to vulnerable sectors. It demonstrates Ukraine's growing capability to take initiative rather than merely reacting defensively. In essence, while Russia still controls significant territory, the balance of power along the front line is shifting. Ukraine's ability to disrupt supply lines, force repositioning, and apply consistent pressure is creating a scenario where every advance by Russia comes at a much heavier cost, setting the stage for potential strategic breakthroughs in the coming months. By mid-2025, the human cost of the ongoing conflict has become staggering, with Russia experiencing heavy losses across multiple sectors. According to updated military estimates, Russian casualties in the first half of 2025 alone are estimated to exceed 150,000 killed and wounded, making it one of the deadliest phases of the war so far. These losses are not just numbers on paper, they have real operational consequences, affecting both morale and the ability to sustain offensive operations. Key factors contributing to Russian casualties: intense artillery exchanges. Continuous Ukrainian bombardments and counter-battery strikes have inflicted severe personnel and equipment losses. High-risk frontline assaults. Russian forces attempted repeated infantry offensives against fortified positions, often at significant cost. Attrition from extended operations. Overstretched units are more vulnerable, unable to rotate troops, leading to fatigue-related losses. Precision drone and UAV strikes. Ukrainian use of drones to target vehicles, artillery, and command points has amplified the attrition rate significantly. The cumulative effect of these casualties has forced Russian commanders to make difficult strategic decisions, including pullbacks in key sectors to consolidate defensive lines. While this doesn't constitute a full-scale collapse, it indicates that Russia's offensive momentum is being significantly curtailed. Military analysts point out that these losses are not evenly distributed. Mechanized units and frontline infantry bear the brunt, while artillery and air support units remain relatively unaffected. But even limited losses in these sectors can impact the timing and effectiveness of coordinated operations, forcing Russia to reassess its overall strategy. Beyond the immediate battlefield implications, the strategic consequences of these casualties are profound. Operational strain. Continuous losses reduce the ability to hold captured territory, forcing frequent defensive reorganizations. Morale impact. Units suffering repeated casualties experience lower morale, increasing the likelihood of hesitation or delayed responses. Resource depletion. Replacement of trained personnel and equipment repair is taking longer, stretching the Russian military logistics network. Strategic pause. High casualties are forcing Russian leadership to slow offensive operations, giving Ukraine valuable time to fortify and counterattack. According to reports from the UK Ministry of Defense, the attrition Russia faces in 2025 is already among the highest recorded in the conflict.
Number of casualties and the prolonged stalemate in key areas are exerting a sustained strain on Russian frontline units and logistical support. This is increased expenditure and tactical withdrawals to avoid high casualties. Psychologically speaking, the constant pressure and fear of unpredictable attacks have taken a toll on Russian morale. The combined effects are leading to an unexpected decline in Russian offensive capabilities. Analysts warn that if this trend continues, Russia may be forced into long-term defensive postures in certain areas, fundamentally changing the dynamics of the front line. Key strategic implications. Slower advances. Every territorial gain now requires higher investment in manpower and equipment. Tactical repositioning. Russian forces must now withdraw and regroup to avoid unnecessary losses. Opportunity for Ukraine. Prolonged Russian strain creates windows of opportunity for Ukrainian counteroffensives, particularly in sectors where logistics and troop fatigue are most severe. Global perception and intelligence impact. High casualties and stalled offensives boost Ukraine's credibility among Western allies, encouraging more support and resources. In short, the Russian front line is under sustained pressure, and the casualty rates are forcing a strategic recalibration. While the war continues, the operational tempo for Russia has slowed, and the risk of further attrition remains high. This reality may define the trajectory of the conflict in the second half of 2025, making Ukraine's counterpressure and intelligence-driven operations even more critical. As we move into the latter half of 2025, the Russia-Ukraine front line has reached a critical juncture. Russia's tactical pullbacks, combined with high casualties and supply line strain, have slowed the momentum of their offensives, while Ukraine's persistent counterpressure has given them a strategic advantage in key sectors. Despite Russia still holding significant territory, analysts agree that the balance of power on the front line is no longer static. Every Russian advance now comes at a heavier cost, and each Ukrainian counterattack demonstrates the growing sophistication and capability of their forces. Strategic overview. Russian operational strain. The combination of overextended units, high attrition, and logistical challenges is forcing a more defensive posture in multiple regions. Ukraine's growing initiative. With drones, precision artillery, and intelligence support, Ukraine is increasingly able to dictate the pace of engagements rather than reacting passively. Morale and psychological impact. Russian soldiers facing constant pressure, unpredictable strikes, and extended deployments are experiencing reduced morale, which can influence decision-making and frontline performance. Potential for major shifts. Analysts predict that the next weeks and months could see localized breakthroughs, where Ukraine could reclaim or threaten strategically important positions if Russia cannot stabilize its lines. From a geopolitical perspective, the current state of the war has global implications. The Western intelligence community continues to provide real-time support, allowing Ukraine to maximize operational efficiency and apply pressure on overstretched Russian forces. The long-term trajectory of the conflict now appears to hinge on Russia's ability to sustain manpower, resources, and equipment, while Ukraine leverages strategic patience and calculated offensives. In essence, 2025 may define the next phase of the war, with Russia's front line under unprecedented strain and Ukraine exploiting tactical and technological advantages. The momentum of this conflict could shift in ways unseen in previous years. Observers warn that any miscalculation could have major battlefield consequences.